This is Daryl Pillsbury. Glad you could be with us for another edition with a conversation. This one is going to be with our Senate President Pro Tem, Peter Shumlin, who is a Democratic. Start again, Joe. Jesus. Oh, I'm doing too many of these.
You'll get in the groove.
Once I do, I'm good. Give me my countdown.
Yeah, you're good at this.
Okay, ready? 1,
Yeah.
2, 3, go.
Hi, welcome. This is Daryl Pillsbury along with Peter Shumlin, Senate President Pro Tem of Windham County, who is also running for the governor of the state of Vermont. Welcome, Peter, and we're glad that you could make it.
Hey.
Give us a little time.
Thanks for having me, Daryl. It's great to be home.
Yeah, I bet
really
it is.
appreciate being on with you.
Yeah, you're putting in a few miles, I see, huh?
And I just go around this state in circles.
Yeah, I bet.
It's good to be in the South.
And we're glad to have you here, and we hope
Right.
that we have you in the State House so that the South can be remembered when we're up there. As a Senate President Pro Tem, it was nice because you did do a lot of work to make sure they remembered us down here.
Well, we got some stuff done, but you know, Southern Vermont forgets we haven't had a governor from Southern Vermont in almost 40 years.
Wow.
Been that long. Tom
Yeah.
Salmon.
Well, then it's time.
Yep, our time has come.
And so that's why we got you here. Let's chat a little bit. First off, how's the campaign going?
It's going really well. I mean, I got to tell you, it's been a little discouraging, to be honest with you. This
Yeah,
campaign has not been run the way we run campaigns in Vermont. And, you know, I really want to be governor, Daryl. People in Windham County know me. I do not want to be governor so badly that I would undermine a good person's character or tell untruths in TV ads about what they've said. You know, I think all Vermonters know that neither Brian or I are going to let criminals dangerous criminals onto the streets. Both of us are honest people who care about the state, and I just wish he'd take those negative ads down and talk about the issues, because so often in campaigns, and you've been through this as an independent, you go, you know, they're all the same. There's no difference between these candidates.
Yeah.
With Brian and I, on almost every issue, from single-payer health care to how to get broadband to every last mile, to how to deal with school spending and school budgets and education, to, you know, literally every single major policy issue, a woman's right to choose.
Yeah, I was going to say, you even go...
We disagree.
Yep.
So let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that we can
Instead
spend the
of-
last 21 days talking about those issues.
Well, you may be the only one doing that,
Well, we're gonna keep
but
at
that's
it.
okay.
We're gonna do it
Okay,
the Vermont
I
way.
think Vermonters want to hear the issues and not about who we're going to let out of prison.
Exactly.
When, as a Vermonter who's sitting there and somebody who's working in the State House, when I saw that ad, I just wanted to throw up. I did call his office, by the way, just to say that you know, come on. You know, if you want to say he's going to let nonviolent offenders out, go ahead. But let's
Right.
That's a Tarrant all over again against Bernie, and it didn't go well that time. So let's talk about the correction issue,
Sure.
since that's the one we're on. I personally agree with what you want to do, letting out some of the nonviolent offenders, because it can save us a ton of money. When I was there, that's one of the things, Pete, that really got to me was when I first was elected in 2000, we spent $45 million on corrections budget.
That's right.
We're now up to about 125 or something.
133.
133. So that's incredible. We got to come up with a plan. They always tell us to think outside of the box. You're doing that.
Right.
You got a plan. Explain it.
And here's the point. The truth is, I've never even said let anyone out early, including nonviolent offenders. All I've said is this. A governor has huge challenges. We have to go where the money is to solve our budget problems. We cannot do what they've done over the last 8 years, which is kind of nibble around the edges. I say go where the money is. Where is the money? The first area of growth in the state budget, the fastest growing challenge in our state budget, is just like Vermont families and small business. It's health care. It goes up 10, 20, 30% a year. We all know that. So I have a plan. Brian doesn't. I have a plan to pass a single-payer health care plan where health insurance is not a privilege, it's a right, and where health insurance follows the individual and is not an obligation of the employer. Now, I know that that's a tough thing to do. I'm not promising it. I'm promising that I will try my best to get it done. We know there's challenges. I think we can do it. So that's the first place I go. Second, what's the second fastest area of growth? You know from being on the Institutions Committee all those years. It's prisons. So here's what we're doing. Right now, Vermont has more nonviolent offenders. Now, nonviolent means they ripped off Walmart, they wrote a bad check, they stole jewelry from their grandmother. Why? What we know about our nonviolent offender population in Vermont is we have more than other states, and 90% of them, like Pete Shumlin when I was a kid, they have difficulty reading. 95% have drug and alcohol-related addictions. a vast majority have some mental health challenges. What do you do? Right now we spend an average of $42,000 a year of Vermont taxpayer money locking them up. I'm not saying send them home early. If you look at the record, they get 1 to 2 to 3 year sentences for their nonviolent crimes. So over a 4-year period, all of them will be on the streets because their sentences are up. What happens when they get on the streets now? On any given day in Vermont, there's 140 prisoners locked up whose time is up, but for whom there is no housing, there's no place for them to go.
Right.
So there's a huge cost right there. But let's do the following 5 things. I'm going to put on the ground the services. That's mental health counseling, drug and alcohol treatment, housing through VHCB, adult basic ed to teach them how to read, and life skills so they can become productive members of Vermont society again. Why is that so important? Because 70% of them end up back in prison right now within 3 years, which make our streets less safe, frankly, because they got to steal something to feed their drug or alcohol habits. We're losing the battle. And I try to put it in Brian's speak. I say, listen, Brian, because he's a pilot. And if you want to get from Burlington to Los Angeles, go with Brian Doobie. You do not want me flying the plane. I say if you want a governor who can do a lot of things at the same time and get them done, go with me. But the point
That's
is,
good.
if you had an airplane ride and you had 100 flights from Burlington to Los Angeles, and 70% of them didn't make it, would you crawl back into the cockpit?
Yeah.
No way. I'm saying, let's be smart. Services on the ground, stop the recidivism. We will save a huge amount of money if over a 4-year period we can stop the 70% revolving door back into prison, and we'll be a more humane state.
Yep. And part of that is the recidivism rate is due to the fact that we have a lot of conditions when they get put back out there. Yeah. They may have smoked pot. Right. They may have taken a swig of a beer. They may have just, then they go in and test. They didn't pass. Back off they go. And that's a huge, huge cost also. So I'm glad that there's somebody out there that has a plan.
Now let's go to that issue. Just while we're on it, because I know something you feel strongly about. What we need is a governor who isn't running for re-election. I don't mean re-election as governor. I'm just saying that I think we're all sick and tired of politicians from all parties whose main motive is to get re-elected. That is not mine. The way I view this job and this assignment, and this is a job interview, so Vermonters need to know this, is I have no desire to go to Washington. My idea of really unhappy life would be to be stuck in Washington, D.C. I'm a Vermonter. I also stayed in the Senate presidency longer than perhaps I should have, but I feel like you do, that legislators should turn over. You don't stay there too long. So I either will serve as governor for a short period of time to get the job done, or I will return to my business, which needs me, frankly. So I see this as a temporary assignment. I will take on things that other governors won't, because my motive is not necessarily just to get reelected. It is to get things done. Now, one of the things I've said that other politicians won't is I believe we should decriminalize marijuana. I say that when I know that there's a list of 200 things this next governor has to do quickly, and this is 199.9, but the point is, let's use our very scarce judicial resources to lock up the people that we're scared of, not the people that we're mad at. And let's use drug and alcohol treatment programs, not only for marijuana, but for alcohol, tobacco, and frankly, prescribed drugs, which is our biggest
booming problem
in
we got.
Yeah,
as somebody who works at the hospital, the amount of people coming in now for that problem is unbelievable.
That's where the problem is. Let's make Vermont a state where we have the best treatment programs and the best prevention programs so that we don't have the challenge that we have right now.
Good. Now I'm going to go on to another, and we need more than a half hour, I guess, Senator. I can tell you that, because when you just hit that, one of the big things also is going to be the state hospital, which the governor in there now has not done a very good job on. I'm sorry. I was there when this whole fiasco happened. We lost our federal dollars and stuff. We need somebody in there that's going to do something there, and somebody in there with a Southern Vermont connection, because the retreat needs to be part of that, in my opinion.
The retreat is the cheapest option. They're ready to do it.
Yeah.
The fact that they haven't gotten through is amazing.
It's mind-boggling.
But the bigger thing you're referring to is, as a state that has a reputation for caring about our neighbors, for being inclusive, for being humane, we have our most vulnerable population in a building, the state hospital, that has been condemned by the federal government. The federal government will not give us reimbursement because that building is so bad. It's costing Vermont taxpayers $8–10 million a year.
Extra.
Because we can't get our act
Yeah.
together, and bottom line, lack of leadership. Let's get it done. Let's make the partnerships with the Brattleboro Retreat and others to ensure that we have great facilities for our most vulnerable population. And if necessary, let's build the small facility in Waterbury, state-of-the-art, to take care of them in a humane and thoughtful manner. And I'll get that done.
And I believe that if somebody can do it, it's you. Let's go to the healthcare issue really quickly now, because this one is a biggie for me. I know that you feel the same way I do about this, which I'm very happy about. So we're going to need to do something about healthcare, which, when we did Dr. Dinosaur, you were there.
Yes.
So you know that it can be done, and we can do a healthcare program run by the government at a good price. Because matter of fact, we just came out, what, second or third in the nation on
Healthiest
our kids. So let's go with the healthcare issue right now, Pete. Tell us what you'd like to see us do.
Here's another area where Brian and I strongly disagree, and this is a debate we should be having.
He wants to just keep going down the way we're doing now, no change.
He believes that if we stick with the current status quo, everything's going to be all right.
Yeah.
I don't. Now, let's forget about the humane aspect of this discussion a minute and just talk raw mathematics. Let's talk about dollars out of Vermonters' pockets. Since they took office 8 years ago, we are spending $2.5 billion more on health care than we were when they took office. We're now spending $5 billion versus 2.5. That's $1 million a day more than we spent yesterday on health care. Vermonters, out of our little 660,000 people, it's $1 million a day. Now, what you need to know about that is it's not sustainable. So you got to ask, why are we in this situation? Why aren't we doing something about it? Well, we all know why. Brian thinks we can rely on the federal bill. I keep saying, you know, they did the best they could, but Senator Patrick Leahy, Senator Bernie Sanders, and Congressman Welch, we have the best congressional delegation in the country. They all agree that they wish they could have passed a single-payer system. They couldn't. What they've said is they'll work with Governor Peter Shumlin, should I be elected, to get the waivers to help us do it in Vermont. Why does it make so much sense? This is not about reducing quality. It's not about doctors and providers working for the government. It's not about a government-run system, as Brian
That's all
says.
scare tactics.
That's all scare. This is about stop wasting money on insurance companies, on 10 to 15 cents on a dollar is spent in Vermont just chasing money around.
That's
the
right.
Crazy billing system.
21 people work at the hospital now to chase the money in our accounting department and stuff.
Exactly.
I mean, it was never that big. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and back when you were in the legislature, the Lewin report said, and this is 11 years ago, if we had implemented a single-payer system 11 years ago, we would have saved $110 million just in administrative costs, just in chasing the money around. And that was when we were spending less than half what we're spending now. Today that number would be $260 million a year. So I say, go where the money is. Let's lead the country. This will be a jobs creator. You get it off the employer's back.
That's the other thing. I'm a big believer in that too.
Creator. So
I
let's get
agree.
it done.
There's a way to bring jobs.
Right.
Shumlin equals jobs and health care.
And Brian keeps saying, well, Peter's making a promise he can't keep. This is what I say to that. Listen, I'm not making a promise.
Right.
This is what I promise you. I will work as hard as I know how, 24/7, to get this done. Work with the president, work with the legislature to design it. We've got Dr. Shao coming back with, for the first time in Vermont history, with the architectural plans, the options for a system like this.
Which will have three. It's not
Three different
just
options.
so it will be
Right.
three.
And what you do is you bring in the healthcare providers, the business people, consumers, the Vermont family. We get around a table and we say, here are the options. What direction do we want to take? You pass that bill in the legislature, governor signs it, you go down to Washington, you work with the best congressional delegation to get it done as quickly as you can. That's one of many things that will help Vermont lead in creating jobs and getting Vermonters back to work, growing our small businesses. Now, I just had a great trip this afternoon. I went up to Omega Optical.
Yeah, that's
Bob
there
Johnson.
you go.
Now, you drive in that driveway, and that's Vermont's future, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
That is what I want to see that happen another 200 times in Vermont. Former junkyard. I used to. I'm an old
I'm
car
with you
buff.
there.
I used to get my.
How many times you been in that junkyard?
Many a time. I got a 52 Dodge. It was my first rig, Dodge truck. A 52 slant 6 Dodge truck pickup. I got my 2 doors out of that place. I got a head for that rig out of there, and a couple of lights. All I'm telling you is, you go up there now. There's the yogurt plant going
Yeah.
on your left.
It's beautiful.
You drive in, you go do a tour, they've got solar panels going up on the roof. You go talk to Bob Johnson and Gordon Bristol and the team, you know what they're doing?
Yeah.
They're down there making these 3D glasses, the technology
That's
which
right.
they stumbled on. They're predicting, they now have a patent for the first change in technology in 3D glasses since the 1930s. They just stumbled on this.
And with the
Small
televisions
example.
and everything coming out, that's going to be
Incredible.
unreal.
He says, Bob Johnson says that the market could be as much as 100 million 3D glasses. What if it's only half that? The point is they're going to be made right here in Vermont.
Yep.
They're going to take the whey from the yogurt plant, run it up through a system in the back, and use the energy from the whey to make those 3D glasses. I mean, this is how we can
Yeah,
beat the
that's
rest
beautiful.
of the world. So this is how we do it. You say to Bob Johnson, a small business person, or myself, who's, you know, built a business right
Yep.
here in Windham County and done embarrassingly well. If you say to us, listen, there's 5 things you can do for us. Brian Doobie says, this is his economic plan. Cut income taxes for the 1,400 Vermonters that make $373,000 a year and more. And I got to tell you, that isn't the biggest way to grow jobs in my judgment. Those are not the folks right now who are really having trouble paying their income taxes. What I would do instead is a single-payer healthcare system that gets health insurance off the employer's back and contains cost. Broadband and internet access to every last mile by 2013. Retrain the workforce, because when you talk to these companies, they'll tell you they have trouble finding trained workers that can do the job. A tax structure that grows wealth and grows jobs, knowing that New Hampshire is right across the water there, and we're losing that battle. And finally, I think it's incredibly important that we include early childhood education as
I
a
agree.
part of our economic development plan. And there's 2 reasons for that. If you want a trained workforce, the earlier you spend those dollars, the better future our kids have. And there's no more important resource than our children. But secondly, it's mostly women that make the horrid choice between the job they want and the child care they can't afford. While I was standing there up at Omega, a young woman comes in. I started talking to her. I said, what are you doing here? She said, I'm applying for a job. She said, I'm applying for a job to make these 3D glasses. I said, that's great. I said, tell me about yourself. I graduated from Leland and Gray High School last year, and I want to stay in Vermont. Well, you know what? I bet she gets that job, and she'll be staying in Vermont. I got daughters. You got kids in college. We both do. I think Vermont has a bright economic future. We need a governor who will make the infrastructure changes that I'm outlining, and opportunity is coming our way. I'm really optimistic about our future.
Well, I'm optimistic depending on who is in charge, because that makes a big difference. I mean, which direction do you want to take? You want to stay where you are now and everything's supposedly going to get better, then, you know, do that, folks. If you want to have some leadership, maybe you better listen to what the gentleman here is saying. Listen, you just mentioned something, and I got a question. On the broadband, how much bonding capacity do we still have? Because at one time we had $200 million worth of bonding capacity for that alone.
Right.
They gave them the authority, the communication folks there.
Yeah. Let me tell you the good news.
Okay.
The first question is, you know, the Doobie Douglas team promised, remember, several years ago, they stood up there at the podium and said, we're going to have broadband to
Yeah,
every last
and
mile
all
by
this
2010.
money and-
Yep, 2010. Well,
Bye.
listen, if I had a dime for every time I go on my cell phone in this gubernatorial campaign, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I wouldn't have to ask people for money.
Yeah, unreal.
So it's a disaster. Now the question is, what went wrong? What went wrong is that Brian Doobie and his party do not believe in public-private partnerships. They just don't. That's why they didn't buy the dams on the Connecticut River when we could have had
Bad
them
move.
cheap. That's why we don't have broadband cell service and high-speed internet to every last mile. That's the reason. So the question is, what does the next governor do? The good news is we get a ton of ERA money that's going to help us build out this system that we didn't have a year ago. So that's really good news. The bad news is we don't have a universal plan to get there.
Yeah.
So if we take the ERA money that we have, use some bonding capacity, and you don't necessarily have to issue the bonds. You have to give the guarantee
That's right.
of the state
That's
of Vermont.
right.
There's a difference there.
Huge difference.
But if you give the guarantee, we can build it out. We must build it out. And I can tell you, we're not going to compete for jobs until we build it out. So the difference between my approach and Brian's is I will use the public authority of the state of Vermont, the public-private partnership to get it done. And Daryl, I liken it to the last governor we had from Putney. The best governor we ever had was from Putney, Vermont, George D. Aiken. He did for electricity
Yeah.
what I will do for broadband,
Yeah.
period. And what did he do? Power companies were doing the same thing these monkeys,
Yeah.
these guys are right now. We can't go past, this population center. So what he said to him? He said, no. He said, Mrs. Murphy, at the end of the dirt road, in that farmhouse, it's a basic public right. She's going to get power too. And they worked it out. They made it work, and they used a public-private partnership to get there.
Well, we're going to have to do something because we definitely need. And there again, does it affect me? No, really. I mean, I live in Brattleboro.
Right.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Go up to my house in
geez, I'm
Putney. We're on a
crow.
copper line.
Well, it was when I was sitting in a committee and you'd listen
Yeah.
to testimony and somebody would come in and say, geez, you guys are, third world country. This is America. I can't even go up the interstate.
Yeah.
It's awful. And that's the one cry I hear all the time.
Right. And as you probably know, I do a lot of business overseas in my
Yeah.
business. And you can go to the remote parts of Vietnam, remote parts of Cambodia, remote parts of the developing world, and you have self-service and internet access. We did a project, we do community service projects over the world,
Yeah.
high school kids. We were rebuilding houses.
Well, hey, listen, I guess you're going to tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about what that does. You're
yeah.
rebuilding houses. Do that.
So basically what we do is we take high school kids and send them all over the world to do basically community service projects.
Yeah.
We build schools in remote parts of Africa and in communities where kids don't have schools.
Yeah.
And these American high school kids go in and do this work and
What an
have the
education right there.
satisfaction of having whole communities get to go to school.
Yeah.
But anyway, I had the Vietnam stuff. We all take different parts of the globe. So I had Vietnam. I wanted to do projects in My Lai because that's where the worst atrocities of the war
I had a
happened.
cousin there.
Yeah, we went in and we blew up, and we literally killed entire communities just to prove that we meant business in the Vietnam War. That was some
Massacre
crazy
at My
idea
Lai,
that we
that's-
did. Yeah, terrible stuff.
Yeah.
We built a house for one of the women who's now very old, that was living in a mud hut, that lay in a pile of bodies of her family members for 2 days, waiting for our troops to leave, because she had to pretend that she was dead to survive. Amazing that. Imagine that. Anyway, my point is, we're in My Lai, we're setting up this very tough thing to do because the communist government doesn't want American
Right.
high school kids there rebuilding schools. So you have to use the provincial government to make it happen. It's very complicated, but we finally did it. And my point is, I'm sitting there in My Lai, Vietnam, middle of nowhere, and you can get internet access that's faster than Dusty Ridge in Putney, Vermont. I mean, there's something wrong with this picture. You wonder why they're kicking us.
Yeah, my daughter's been to China and Africa, and both times she could talk better than we could. It's
it's
amazing.
incredible.
Well, we're getting close to the end, and we have to hit the issue
We got
for
pretty
Windham
far from
County.
Vermont in that one.
Vermont Yankee, yeah. We just discovered another little leak, another little oops. We're
Yeah.
sorry about that. And this is where and although reading the paper today, Doobie did give a nice little, oh, gee whiz, you guys, I better get somebody else I can trust before I start talking with you. Nice little statement, he said. But we all still know he's still going to probably
Well, that's
relay
more
some-
of the same.
And this is,
Yeah.
that's right. So there's definitely a difference here. We all know how you feel. Explain to the viewers why and what's the process going to be like if you're governor.
Well, let me first say that we need a governor who's right the first time on these big issues. I don't think Brian's been right any time on this issue. This is where we are. I was a big supporter of VY for years, in my years in the Senate. Entergy Louisiana, in my judgment, is a company that we cannot trust and won't tell us the truth. I don't think they have Vermont's best interests at heart. So I've made the judgment that as long as Entergy Louisiana is running that plant, we can't trust them, period. They do not have our best interests in mind, period. They will not tell us the truth, period. So my judgment is we need a governor who's going to hold their feet to the fire to make the best of a bad situation. Now, how bad is it? We have tritium leaking into the groundwater now in a burning community. It's just started. Let's hope it's not disastrous. I have asked Entergy Louisiana to put 4 additional pumps down there to pull out as much of the contaminated water as we possibly can. They're running 2 pumps right now. It would only cost roughly $200,000 to put an additional 4 pumps down there. Do it now. Second, I will use the power of the judiciary to insist that Entergy Louisiana keeps the residents of Vernon whole if that tritium gets into their groundwater. I think it may well. It may well get into the aquifer. If it does, it's in the groundwater. Entergy Louisiana needs to be held accountable. I will do that. I do not believe Brian Doobie will. Brian Doobie has been an apologist for Entergy Louisiana. He will stand up. It doesn't seem to matter how many leaks and lies there are. He defends their stockholders. I'm going to defend the people of this great state of Vermont and the people in Vernon and protect them. This is the challenge. This is the only plant that actually has cesium and strontium leaking from the plant, not just tritium. So the goal now must be to extract as much of that contaminated water as we possibly can, as quickly as we can with additional pumps, and then hope that we can mitigate what I think will be the biggest man-made disaster in Vermont history. We need a governor who understands that there's no amount of talking Entergy Louisiana can do, they can never be trusted. Brian seems to think they can still regain his trust. They can't regain mine. Second, someone who's going to hold their feet to the fire to insist that they fill up the decommissioning fund, they make the residents of Vernon whole, that if they pollute their wells, they're going to find another aquifer, get them a clean water supply, and ensure that the value of their homes, which is the savings of most of the residents of Vernon, doesn't get affected by their mistakes, their mistruths, and their lack of maintenance to those underground pipes.
Well, I have two granddaughters that go to that school, and I now am concerned. I was a little bit before, and I told them, don't drink out of the water fountain, you know, here, I don't want to panic them or anything. But, you know, I worked down at VY for 7 years in the 80s. It was well run. It's a different time, different everything then. And now my problem is now with this group is if we have an oops, like you said, it would be the biggest natural disaster. We would end up what happened to New Orleans, only worse. We can't come back. So everything that I have would be gone, and you know darn well we wouldn't be reimbursed. So I think that now it is time for that plant to shut down. And I'm sorry, people have known that it's been coming for a while. I mean, where else do you know you're going to lose your job 20 years in advance? So anyway, our time is running down, Senator. I want to thank you very much. You got about another minute to maybe tell the folks something maybe we didn't talk on, and why they should be voting for you on November 2nd.
Well, Daryl, I appreciate it. People in Windham County know me well. I built my business here, raised my family here, care deeply about this part of the state. I ask when you vote to think about two things. Who's best qualified to both cut the budget, manage the budget, and get our economy moving again, number one. And two, who understands that Windham County is a part of Vermont, that we need jobs in the South too. I think there's been real neglect down here in terms of job creation from the state of Vermont. There's a feeling that only Chittenden County needs economic development. I don't see it that way. As someone who was born in Brattleboro, raised in Putney and Westminster West, raised my kids here, I understand that we have challenges, that times have been tough, that I think we have a much better future. We need a governor from Southern Vermont who gets it. I would love to have your vote on November 2nd.
Well, thanks an awful lot for spending time with us, Senator. For Daryl Pillsbury and Senator Peter Shumlin, thank you for watching. Remember, your voice or your vote is your voice. Get out there on November 2nd. Make it count. Thank you very much.